Everybody. Today's session with Shanti is going to be a little bit different to how we normally host our web chats. So how we used to do it normally is we have a lecture, but this time it's going to be completely different. So we've got Shanti coming to share her wisdom and her knowledge on a topic that we don't normally talk around. So in our fraternity, we have lots of scientists, engineers, and left-brain thinkers who come up with solutions. And we want to listen carefully today to a different approach that she's going to pitch to us, but how you take your solutions and collaboratively work with stakeholders from various industry to come up with solutions that are co-created. So we're looking forward to that. So she's going to share her thoughts on that. There's not going to be a presentation. And then we're going to open the floor and we want a lively discussion. So for this instance, we invite you to share your thoughts and turn on your camera and join the conversation. Thank you very much. And over to Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helene. And it's such an honor to be here in this space with people who are committed to regeneration and rehabilitation. And I do understand that many people here are technical people, and many of you come from fields where precision matters, where data must be verified and models must hold and outcomes must be measurable. And I know in this space are many engineers and scientists and technical custodians who translate possibility into structure. Before I start speaking of what I've uncovered in my recent, the past few years working in cross-sectoral collaborations to regenerate ecosystems and support communities in becoming self-sustaining, I would like to acknowledge those who would not be able to be present in these spaces. I spent many years in the beginning of this, what some people would call a career. For me, it was an initiation in communities, rural communities that showed me the reality of where most people are at. And I sat a lot with especially grandmothers and grandfathers, elders who carry a wisdom that is often not recognized in these spaces. And I have sat with mothers who have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get their kids ready to walk to school in communities that could be doing a much better service to them in terms of infrastructure and nature. And I've sat with wisdom keepers and indigenous knowledge holders who have shown me that the way I grew up, I went to school, I went to university, I was taught a particular way of approaching this world and these systems that isn't the full truth. And I was deeply humbled for many years, understanding that a lot of these perspectives are missing in our boardrooms, in our strategic collaborations, in our incredible plans for land design and regenerative agriculture designs. And I started to piece together the missing perspectives. So I would like to acknowledge those who are often missing at these conversations. And I try my best to represent what they've taught me, what they've brought in my life. And from all of this deep work has emerged a model for radical collaboration, which I'll go deeper into. I never planned for my career to lead me to a space now where I'm working with several minds, several authorities that provide global frameworks, several engineers, and activists and wisdom keepers and youth leaders and rewilding experts and universities in a space between many worlds. And so that's why it's hard for me to do go into public speaking, because how do I honor all of these perspectives? How do I honor the wisdom keeper who prays every day to the land and who views it as a living being, and honor the engineers who understand the science behind soil remediation and the technologies that could support regions into becoming sustainable. So I'll try my best. And I appreciate all the engineers and the scientists and the technical custodians that are here. And I find that even in the most exacting sciences, there is always a point where logic meets mystery, where what we can measure depends entirely on what we choose to value. And so the Nature Positive Blueprint, for me, my involvement in it was born from that space. It began as a framework to quantify restoration in mining regions, but has also evolved into something larger, a living experiment of how science and technology and human relationship can work together as one system. So in this blueprint, we're not only mapping biodiversity or designing microgrids, we're building feedback loops between data, ecology, and behavior. So we're combining many different technologies, from remote sensing to AI-driven habitat analysis and kinetic and solar energy innovations, and bioremediation techniques with soil remediation techniques, and as well as community-based observation and input, and aspects of indigenous knowledge systems, for example, indigenous ecological calendars and rituals, very much that can be integrated in solutions developed for ecosystems. So, in other words, we're learning how to make the planet's intelligence visible to us and to itself. So through scientists and engineers and great thinkers and the incredible arsenal of professions and thinkings, we do hold the keys to regeneration, and yet we must acknowledge that regeneration happens from nature itself. And so that's at the core of what I do, is we often speak of regenerating nature as though she was broken. And I use she because of her creative potential and ability. And so we often speak of regenerating nature and as if we're her saviors in some sense. But what if we were to switch the script and realize that nature is a force of regeneration? What if our role is not to fix her, but to remember her, to see her and to feel her and to be seen by her? It's like, have you ever heard of someone that was loved by someone who didn't see them or recognize them? And at this point, when you see successful remediation or rehabilitation projects, there's a creativity, an inherent creativity within it, where that the abundance, the perfect example is regenerative agriculture compared to conventional agriculture. When you see permaculturists or regenerative practitioners successfully produce food or farm, when you walk on that farm, there is life everywhere, and the life itself is created by itself, and the abundance is inherent to the way that ecosystem is structured. And so I know I may lose some people in this creative language. My background is communications, and I try and bring creativity and this paradigm shift in every place I go, and I'll go deeper into what and how it's emerged into tangible projects that feel different and that feel in line with the values that we would want to foster for our children. Values of harmony and co-creation, where no one is left behind, where there is abundance is inherent. I would also, if anyone ever wants to interject, I'm always welcoming questions throughout, but I'll go deeper into why this nature positive blueprint, and in this webinar, the name was The Art of the Nature Positive Blueprint. And it is because nature is not just, it's not necessarily a machine. I know that the mechanistic view of science that views everything as a machine and everything can be broken down into equations has some truth to it. But beyond that, I think everyone can agree that nature is a masterpiece. This is not a fake background. This is a real background. The only place in my home right now that has signal. I moved to Magaliesburg to work closer with the mining communities here and to involve in a farm and quite a few projects in this area across this incredible treasure that we have in our beautiful nation of South Africa, and surrounding this mountain are rich treasures, as you must all know. And I moved here, left the city because I saw an opportunity to rewrite human systems here with incredible stakeholders who have committed to changing. And so nature is not just a mechanism, it is a masterpiece. And blueprints, by definition, are technical. They suggest precision and engineering and the ability to repeat and replicate. But when we speak of nature positive, in this context, I'm not speaking of designing machines. I'm speaking of participating in mystery. And to work with the living world requires intuition and patience and rhythm and humility and an ability to witness beauty. Those are the same qualities that define art. So the art of the nature positive blueprint is the art of seeing patterns, not just data, and the art of listening to land before we build on it. The art of storytelling, because everything is a story. Money is a story that we've told ourselves. Value of certain minerals is a story that we've told ourselves. Religion is a story. And most of these incredible systems, even politics, governance, it's all a story that we've given value to. And the art of coherence is the ability to weave emotion, science, and purpose into form. And that is what we have been working on. And I'm very excited to share the outcomes. But let me just finish on the blueprint aspect. As I mentioned, we're weaving some incredibly advanced environmental and spatial technologies. It took me a while to find custodians of these technologies that could honor the deeper need for reconnection. But after 12 years of deep searching and looking, I have found, or they have found me maybe, custodians of technologies, renewable technologies that really do bridge the gaps that other environmental attempts or attempts to rebalance environment and human systems have done. And these technologies, I can barely understand them myself. All of you would probably be able to better understand them, but I understand their essence and how their implementation within regions could support the creation of abundance. There is no reason for our technology to be extracting the way it is. We have all the solutions out there. And at the core of what's missing is communication. Communication with each other for sure, but also communication with the forces that we are not willing to acknowledge. So technology becomes sacred when it leans to serve the living world. And the way some groups are forming, especially in response to the collapses of this world, the wars, the ecosystem collapses, the climate crises that we're seeing, that are often very much linked to the lack of biodiversity. Well, these technologies that could address them are sacred in a pure sense. So the art of nature positive blueprints is therefore not to oppose technology, but to support it in listening, to code it with conscience, and to innovate in rhythm with the planet's own intelligence. And then why do I call it the science of radical collaboration? Because collaboration is not chaos, it's physics. It follows laws as natural as gravity. It has feedback, reciprocity, coherence, and emergence. And radical collaboration is not a vague call for teamwork. It's a science of relationship. The study and practice of what makes life systems work. It teaches us to read the invisible architecture of trust, to understand how energy moves people and projects, and to design conditions for synergy instead of burnout. And I found a lot of people in these spaces, including myself in my earlier parts of work, to be constantly burning out. And it feels like every step forward is 10 steps back. And I believe that the science of radical collaboration, I've seen the science of radical collaboration to bridge these spaces where energy drains. Energy in every human that is part of these projects and these strategies, but also the energy within the strategies themselves, where because of siloed approaches, they end up falling apart. And monoculture thinking, monoculture farming, monoculture regeneration attempts, when we only look at one aspect of an ecosystem and disassociate the other aspects, it leads to failure. That is the definition of a cancer cell. It is isolated. It doesn't know what to do. It is not connected to the larger organism, and so it self-replicates until it becomes damaging to the entire ecosystem. And so our individualistic paradigm in today's world is a big reason why the greater organism is falling apart. And so the science of collaboration is the science of connectivity, how information and emotional flow within networks. And it's the science of pattern recognition, seeing where relationships strengthen or decay. And it's the science of emergence, And that's where it's quite hard. But when we let collective intelligence self-organize, magic happens. The thing is that would require a lot of dismantling of what our education system has fostered in us, of everything must be structured and boxed. But there are ways to dismantle those boxes whilst also retaining the incredible value of education today. And then finally, the science of feedback within radical collaboration. Learning from failures, the way ecosystems do. And that's where the humility aspect is so important. Can we speak of our failures in a way that does not blame, does not oppose? In today's world, we are quick to demonize and polarize. There is as you can see in world politics, and even in spaces like regenerative agriculture in South Africa, there are two sides, organic versus regenerative. And our inherent or our default thinking of trying to identify an enemy, trying to identify a problem, trying to identify what is the source of the issue, and let us destroy it, let us exterminate it, let us dismantle it. That polarizing and demonization thinking is what ends up perpetuating the very systems that we're trying to change. And we can see that especially in the realm of conflict in the world. Peoples are oppressed, and so we exterminate the oppressors, and the pattern continues. And at the core of that is the story we tell ourselves and the paradigm beneath it. And so art is how life expresses itself, and science is how life understands itself. And when they meet in integrity, we rediscover what it means to belong to a living planet, but also we rediscover an incredible potential for new thinking. So a quick point on a big reason why I got involved in a nature positive blueprint with the mining sector and the other big industries here and stakeholder groups here is because when I started understanding these big industries that I thought were so unreachable, so complex, and they are, but I used to be very angry at them. I used to think that we live in a civilization that calls itself profitable only because it does not pay its debt to the living world. And I used to think if industries had to compensate nature for what they took, the water, the minerals, the soil, the wind, no one would be profitable. And found that every profit ledger hides the unpaid labor of earth, and of those who live closest to her wounds, like mining, the communities there. I used to have a deep anger, and I had to go through my own journey of letting go of this. And that's why self-work and mental readiness and all the things that we don't acknowledge in these corporate boardrooms and these incredible global conferences where we speak of sustainable development goals and frameworks to tackle this enemy that is carbon, this enemy that is extraction, this enemy that is this and this and this. And when I stopped seeing the world in heroes and enemies as one ecosystem where everyone is part of one story, everything changed for me. And I actually went into business in a big way. I went into the idea of bioregional economies, and a bioregional economy is very much an art in big ways. And the bioregional economy is an economy designed to serve the life of a place. It doesn't just start with markets or metrics, but with the actual mapping of the land, the watersheds, the soils, the species, the cultures. Those are the living boundaries that actually sustain us. So in a bioregional economy, food, water, energy, materials, and care systems are sourced, produced, and circulated primarily within the ecological limits and social networks of a region. It doesn't isolate, it connects through integrity. And bioregionalism is gaining a lot of traction in this world. And I relate to a lot of what's being said, but at the same time, I can't think of a bioregional economy without being connected to my bioregion. And that is why I moved here, to experience this bioregion and inspire all of my endeavors, especially within the context of this nature positive blueprint, where we are identifying pilot projects and creating bioregional hubs. I had to be here to do it. And in this bioregional economy world, it doesn't mean there is no export and import. And if we could get the scientific minds, the engineers, to go deeper into these schools of thought, we could find figures of how much can a bioregion export and import. So a bioregional economy is both ecological and cultural. Ecological because it obviously supports, restores, maintains, regenerates soil, water, and biodiversity, but it's also cultural because it revives communal and individual belonging and interdependence within a bioregion. A big reason why there is crime, there is conflict, is because we don't see each other as a community, as a family. So in bioregional economy models, economy becomes ecology in motion. It becomes a circular dance of energy and gratitude, where each act of production also becomes an act of care. So this nature positive blueprint that I'm part of was initially sparked by conversation between elders, actually. And there is a document that I'm happy to share that has been publicly distributed, which was the catalyst of it. And I see it as the body of research and frameworks and detailed science that I'm sure you all can appreciate, that opened the door to everything else I've said. Credibility today is really hard to get when you're trying to reconnect parts of life that are leading to the devastation of nature. So within this nature positive blueprint, it's a compendium that was just the first step. It is not the full blueprint of let's go now replicate it in every bioregion and everything will be fine. The nature positive blueprint, the one I'm speaking of, was this compendium was done in collaboration with Boston Consulting Group and the International Council for Mining and Metals and Sibanye-Stillwater and Angamma Charitable Trust. I am the representative of Angamma Charitable Trust, and we went into about 2-month process to really map out the reality of where we're at, especially in the mining sector, and core findings of what's happening, and the dangers of inaction. And we found that inaction could cost the mining industry over 16% of its market value by 2030, while acting regeneratively could boost it up to 20%. And we built a framework from the mitigation hierarchy: avoid, reduce, restore, regenerate, contribute, as you know, but expanded it to include ecosystems, economy, society. Everything we found aligns with most global frameworks, and I won't go into detail of it because it's really extensive. But we within it found 8 levers that we can address in the Magaliesburg region with the mines or with the stakeholders who are choosing to get involved in this collaborative process. So this companion was very much an offering of how what is to come makes sense in terms of shareholder value, in terms of corporate KPIs, in terms of the CSR goals that some corporates have. And what came after was more of what I'm speaking about and in the greater chat here, was a position statement from Angamma Charitable Trust within it that tries to introduce the missing narratives that I try to represent in these conversations and in these strategies. So I think Helene will give me the process to be able to share these documents that I believe most people here would appreciate. So the next part is the science of radical collaboration. And I almost want to start with what it led to before actually going into what it is. And what is possible in its application is something completely new and unique. We can look at entire pieces of land that have been devastated and extracted from, and shift the perspective of what is the opportunity here. So instead of problem solving, we are solutions building. And in that openness, we can introduce really radical ideas and frameworks and technologies that are already all out there, but within a context that honors what the region itself can create. And the dance between those, I found, has opened the doors to people and land to reach unseen levels of creativity and innovation. And I have seen the potential for truly self-sustaining communities. So yeah, radical collaboration. It's the science of reconnecting the relationships within a project. I define it as intergenerational, multicultural, and cross-sectoral collaboration. And how it actually looks is finding intersections, especially through gatherings and conversation and dialogues, but not in the ways that not just in the ways that we usually do it, with corporate agendas and boardrooms and conferences, different types of conversations. And I don't know if I'll go deeper into that. There are spaces to find out more about these activities and workshops. At the core of radical collaboration is the integration of living systems, and there is an aspect of human readiness, a human readiness layer. Are humans within a project or initiative or corporate or strategy? Are they ready? Are they clear on what the goal of the particular project is, but how it fits within the greater ecosystem or bioregion it is in? And within that is ensuring that frameworks don't collapse under cultural resistance. And the cultural resistance here is not just in cultures and communities. It's also within organizations. Did someone say something?
I know I broke your heart, Leon.
Sorry, to Lisa, did you speak, or are you unmuted? Oh, okay. So radical collaboration is a structured team transformation journey, basically, that aligns technical, social, and ecological intelligence around a shared regenerative purpose. In community language, it's a way of remembering how to work together again. In the academic language, we could call it a participatory design process that integrates systemic analysis with embodied cognition. At the core, it's integrating living systems intelligence into industrial and community design. So I'm going to be closing out soon, but I felt really called to touch on the biggest barriers in this work. I'm right now working with several stakeholders in this region, and there is a very strong call for whatever we are building to be able to implement it, and I don't like the term, but replicates it in other regions of the world. And I might be speaking here as me and what I contribute to it, but this work is a network of networks. And the greatest barrier to it all, as I've said before, is communications, is the spaces where we can understand the whole of what is happening and our role within each, within the whole, and understand how to navigate in these massive projects. And communication issues, especially when people step on each other's toes or disregard each other's goals or vision or agenda. That's when I found white elephant projects are born, and corruption is born, and conflict. And also, when funding runs out, I believe that is due to a gap in communication. And another big barrier is the division paradigm. People have found in these spaces what has drained my energy the most, because it's what I see, and it's what I've studied and formalized, is this the paradigm of interbeing is a paradigm of realizing that we cannot exist without everything that is around us. In fact, everything that is in the cosmos. And the paradigm of separation is the idea that we are all separate, and that no matter what I do, it might affect the ecosystems or the people that it directly affects, but it's not going to affect me or my kids, because let me just get everything that I can now. And it doesn't matter the harm it makes. It does. And so I found in these spaces, the most disheartening thing has been the different stakeholders who blame each other for the wrong and for the dysfunctions. You know, from the people who say that big industry is greedy and manipulative and only after profit. And I've heard some people say that communities are entitled and don't actually show up for the work. I've heard some people say government is corrupt and not and inefficient. And I've heard other people say activists and NGOs, they just complain and consume resources. And I've also unfortunately heard that indigenous people who say that indigenous knowledge is primitive, and religion is a colonial trap. And the inability to see how all of these groups could actually contribute to each other, and could learn a lot from each other, and creating spaces where we can all come to the table. I guess there are not many facilitators of that, especially regionally, but they are there. And a lot of young people are being called to these spaces of intersection. That's another big thing that I'm involved in, is how do we hand over all this knowledge to the young people in ways that empower them and doesn't cage them. So yeah, if we keep focusing on the extremists of every group, we're not going to get anywhere. And every person that I've experienced in the past 2 years of this process has been spectacular. Even from groups that have a lot of judgment, everyone has been willing to show up as a human. And sometimes we get stuck in the bureaucracy of the systems that we represent. And there are many pathways to bridge this. And the information is there. And at the core, I don't believe it's something you learn. It's something you remember. Anyone who has children, I think, knows what I'm talking about. They're not taught to be the way they are. I mean, the most wonderful parts of them. Yeah, I think this nature positive blueprint I'm involved in, that could support other similar endeavors, and I welcome that at any time, is really the moving from sustainability to reciprocity, and giving more life than when we take, and realizing that that's where abundance lies. And this blueprint is not just about minds or biodiversity. It's about remembering the covenant between humanity and the living earth. And when we recognize nature as a partner, not as property, regeneration happens through us, rather than us making it happen outside us. And I'm very interested to hear what engineers and technical people have to say about all of this. This type of shift and programmatic approach is hard to measure and quantify. It's hard to create an equation of A plus B equals C, this kind of shift in thinking. And yet, I am living proof that that it works. I followed this process and kept the values and the practices involved in radical collaboration. And I was very much guided by people and by visions, by agendas into a space from the call for such a blueprint to support regions in rewriting their human systems. And I was brought into a need to position myself. I was representing the networks that I do. And then from there, I was led into the development and design of strategies that are deeply holistic, that not only tackle the 6 basic needs of the human today, but also expand on systems and technologies that can catapult communities into innovation. I mean, I have witnessed regenerative value chains that where the more you produce this product, the more nature thrives. I'm part of circles where the waste management technologies that are emerging could actually turn all waste into treasure. I'm part of groups where the potential for energy creation ends up creating too much energy. You can actually sell it off. And just a note on that is I struggled with the current renewable energies today. I mean, you know, the fact that you need 600 tons of soil, you displace 600 tons of soil to produce one electric vehicle, was really disheartening for me. And so it was hard for me to go into renewable energy creation. If I need to destroy ecosystems to produce solar panels, what's the point? And yet the technologies that bridge that are there, biodegradable solar panels. And I can go deeper into the actual technologies, or you're welcome to get back in touch with me. But at the core of it is the framework of how do we enter and acknowledge a region. For me, it was Michalisburg. How do I see it for what it is currently, what it was, and what it can be? How do I make sure that all of the perspectives within this region that contribute to it and that contribute to it and benefit from it, the actual custodians that would be working generationally here, how are they brought into design? And in rollout and implementation, what are the governance structures that will ensure the integrity of the process is honored? And I found in these spaces, and I've heard several times from people who are full-on atheists and various religions and various, you know, beliefs or cultures, all agree that there is magic happening in these spaces. And that's why I'm very excited to share this with all of you. And I hope it made sense. I'd love to hear your perspectives on what I've said. But also if there's nothing immediate, I understand that also. But I would learn a lot from what you have to say. So, Helene, I think I think I'll leave it here. I think I've spoken for 50 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Shanti, for that context. We've got one question so long from Ida Breed, so we can hand over to her. Ida, if you'd like to raise that question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the talk, Shanti. It's very interesting to listen to you. And I've also been involved in collaborative projects, and I can certainly identify with many of the challenges that you mentioned. So I'm from the University of Pretoria. I'm a landscape architect, and we're working on a project with various different disciplines on also understanding collaboration as a way of finding solutions to environmental problems in the city. We're working in the city of Tshwane. So I pasted some questions for you, and it's basically also in preparation for our own talks and conversations coming up where we've been asking certain questions to ourselves. So I also thought maybe your questions or your answers to these questions could also help such a conversation, especially because you have so much knowledge and experience in this field. So I was wondering, because I was listening and you were describing this collaboration and what it's about and kind of what it would look like and what your ambitions are. But you know, we also often ask ourselves what is actually our deeper goals with what we are trying to achieve, and it's often nature related, I suppose. But if you can maybe try to summarize that a little bit, what do you feel is the core goals of this radical collaboration? And then, of course, the practical question, what kind of policy and practice shifts would actually further these goals? I know it's a hard question, but I would appreciate you talking a bit on that.
Incredible. Okay, so basically, yeah, the goals of radical collaboration. It's funny, the first thing that came to mind when you spoke there was radical collaboration is an inherent law of nature. When you look at an ecosystem, it is deeply collaborative. And we have assumed that we've framed it as survival of the fittest. And we've created this hierarchy in ecosystems. And it was a useful way to see nature and the way it organizes for the time we were in. And now that way of thinking is leading to extreme disbalance and dysfunction and disease. And so radical collaboration is at the core of everything around us. And so the goal of radical collaboration, I could ask, what is the goal of the tree collaborating with the mycelium underneath it? What is the goal of the rain falling on a forest? And what is the goal of the animals and the insects and microbes in the river here, down there, that is one of the few that that I've experienced where I can still drink the water from the river. And it is such a radical paradigm shift. Children don't know what to do with it. So what is the goal of that ecosystem? And then and its relationships within it. And so at the core of and I don't want to sound preachy or, you know, religious here, or you know, I'm just trying to observe at the core of these radically collaborative systems is one could say, the goal to grow and sustain life. How that translates to strategic teams that are working on a particular project or within a particular course obviously we can't just put on the whiteboard, we're growing and sustaining life. Like, we have to have more specific goals within the project itself. And however, the integration of radical collaboration would be to grow and sustain the life of the group and why you are meeting together. And there are obviously activities and frameworks that you can incorporate in each activity to promote the that energy between the people in the team, that energy of radical collaboration. But at the core of it is just the acknowledgement of it being in the room would allow people to see what's missing. If I took out the trees here, what would happen to this ecosystem? If I took out the bees, I'm sure all of you know actually exactly what would happen, probably on a scientific level. And so I think within universities, it's the most exciting place to implement this model because young people are direct channels of the future, and the innovation and imagination that emerges from just their state of being, let alone thinking, make the fruits of radical collaboration so much greater. This has been in my experience. And so, yeah. So I guess I did outline a few goals there of radical collaboration on a greater whole and project whole. And then I would like to touch on the individual, on every human that enters a space of radical collaboration. Energy is brought in and out of that person. And you can feel it, you can sense it, the difference. No matter what you believe governs this universe, you can sense it. I have experienced it. Tears coming from engineers that I've always assumed could not feel in that way. Wrong assumption of mine. And a moment of deep, humble bowing from industry leaders in response to a invocation that was brought by a wisdom keeper. And so you can sense the difference in how people respond. And then with that, you can sense how different the architecture of the conversation or the strategy is. And then its application in the world, whatever it is, a course or a rewilding project or soil remediation project or renewable energy implementation or social enterprise development program. The big thing that I see is when we start with radical collaboration from the beginning, then we start to see that the outputs are not all interrelate and are interdependent. And that influences the design of the projects or strategies or courses or research studies. So that's what I would have to say on the goals. What I would say on what practice shifts or policies, I believe is what you asked, could help foster this. It's a big one. That's where, for me, indigenous knowledge systems is the most important variable to meaningfully integrate, not to tokenize, and not to utilize, and not to what's being done today. I've seen often we've turned indigenous knowledge systems integration into a photo shoot or checklist, and at the core that goes against it, against what it stands for. When I spoke in the beginning of when we recognize nature as a force of regenerating herself, we might stop thinking we're her saviors. Indigenous knowledge systems embody that recognition in their existence. And people always assume that these systems are only the rituals or the stories or the ceremonies or the teachings. But those are fruits of what it actually is, which is a paradigm, just like the paradigm we all embody here that we grew up with in modern society, especially South Africa. The economic, the socioeconomic and political paradigm that we are brought in. And so I think just the very invitation of bringing in different perspectives within every level of decision making, of research in universities. For example, a crazy dream of mine back when I was going through various forms of initiations with indigenous knowledge systems was, why in hospitals can't we have next to every Western doctor a traditional doctor, or someone who speaks of, or who understands illnesses in a different way. And I know they have some success stories like this, I think in Australia. Same thing in universities. Alongside the accreditation techniques and methods, can we think of different ways to accredit credibility? A big initiative that, not initiative because it's not active, it's more waiting for the right opportunity, is how can we acknowledge that there's this one grandmother in a village that I sat with her for 4 days, and she taught me more than I learned in 2 years in university. And yet she can barely read and write. But her PhD in life is incredible. So in terms of policies, I do believe there are radical collaboration weavers who can support the conditions, the creation of the conditions of such spaces. And I find that useful to bring into where radical collaboration should be implemented. And I think this is in academia, in corporate, in government, and in development work, which includes the socio-ecological development. And there are a network of practitioners who can support at least the catalyzing of this. And then you'll find the whole point of it is for it to find a life of its own. And especially once a governance model, a regenerative governance model is implemented, you'll see the immediate changes in how people respond. I'd love to speak directly to professors or academic people, lawyers, government people. Like, let's sit in a room and see how can this be fostered and nurtured and implemented. So I guess I don't have all the answers, far from, but I'm here to yeah, I'm here to, oh yeah, so also in the practice shifts, to achieve support such goals, I mean, apart from what I've mentioned, is the most important part of co-creation is the feeling of belonging. When someone feels they don't belong to something, they will reject it. And youth mental illness today that has doubled in 20 years and that it's just increasing, is a proof of that. I was one of those youth, and will always be in some sense, but I grew up extremely depressed because of the narratives that are being created in this world. The world's going to end, and everything's, terrible, and it's a fight, or fight your way to the top and get as much as you can. And I felt like I didn't belong to this world. Like, how can I belong to a world that's broken? And it took me many years to reset the narrative that it's not broken, and I am part of it. And once I reconnected that, I had a mission. And once I had a mission, I had purpose and energy and joy, even through the hardships. So at the core is belonging. And so the most vital thing is to always come back to the why of this space where this radical collaboration is being implemented. Why are we here? And as broad as possible, the biggest vision where we will all end up, and then working your way back to the phases ahead, the values, the ethics, what we stand for, and what we will embody no matter what, even when conflict arises. Yeah, likely the most important thing of today is gathering. I don't think I'll go too far into that though, but yeah, I hope, Christina, if that answered some of what you were thinking.
It definitely did. Thank you very much. I do appreciate your thoughts. It really helps make me think as well. So thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, realize it's over the hour. Helene, is it okay?
We still have a little bit of time. I don't see any further questions, so I'm just going to ask one. We've had a very philosophical discussion now, and I was wondering if, for the benefit of people in the room who are used to working with solutions, could you give one or two tangible examples of how you co-created a project that actually that was implemented? Just to ground this a little bit, and then I think we can close after that.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you, Shanti.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone allowing me the space to be philosophical. And I do want to mention that at the root of a lot of what could benefit from shifting is the philosophy of things. And so that's why I focus a lot on this in spaces like this. And I actually focus more on the programmatic approach and the detailed technical aspects in other groups, and to create a balance, I guess. So in terms of how programmatically it all happened is, even that is philosophical in some sense, because of how it happened. It was weaved together without any agenda leading the process. It was two elders that began this whole process here in Magaliesburg, Jay Naidoo and Neil Froneman. There's a recording on BCG's Boston Consulting Group's LinkedIn page of conversation between them, of why they started this process and what they see for their region. And from there, Boston Consulting Group came and in a huge capacity contributed to the process to formalize a framework. How can we look at systems and lessen the impact of mining? In fact, and not just mitigate, but foster regeneration. And then from there, multiple teams were created that tackle different aspects of what this could look like. And I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what's happening now because we're still finding our way. And everything I said today is learnings from that, and we are implementing them. But the governance structure of how such an initiative can happen when it's different groups and no one is paid to do this also. This is what I choose to do because I believe in it and because I live here now. And all of the other teams were all from different organizations. It's a multi-stakeholder approach. And when we come together, how do we first make sense of everything that's happened in our own organization or continuation of the greater blueprint? How do we bring it all together, understand the different stakeholders we've all engaged, and how it links to the greater initiative? And that's where I'm personally looking deeply at softwares and AIs who can support the bridging of these conversations and these project streams. And at the core of it is a new kind of governance model. For example, there's been an agreement to introduce the idea of a wisdom council within initiatives like this of various elders or people who have no direct benefit from this initiative and yet who understand the essence of it, that can guide the process, not like a board, something a bit more relevant to maintaining the integrity of the process. And they would meet 4 times a year. They are meeting 4 times a year to guide the process. And then we have the usual categories of stakeholders: management, actioners, greater supporters. And within this part of the process now is deep stakeholder engagement within a nature positive initiative. And so that's why I'm not going to touch too much on what we are planning, because these stakeholders have not been fully engaged yet. And so their input needs to be brought in, and this constant feedback, hence the radical collaboration model I spoke of. And then what I am already starting in my own capacity with my partners is broad templates, models for a bioregional hub, where I mentioned the 6 principles, the 6 basic human needs that are actually outlined by an incredible organization called Elemental Eco Holdings, that are stewards of the future in big ways. And there are many more, but I don't want to go too much in detail right now. Where we can map out a bioregional hub that could sustain the environment in which it is, regenerate the landscapes that need regenerating, whilst also creating regenerative value chains, circular economies. And that's where the 8 levers that I mentioned earlier are tackled. And for that, you need a very coordinated, very focused team to at least build the skeleton of it, because that's what actually this nature positive blueprint is a skeleton to bring within different regions so they can fill whatever form they require for that particular region, culture, ecosystem services. But so the core is a new lens on this, and this lens was used for, there are 3 bioregional hubs being designed right now. One of which is in an extremely devastated landscape where I don't think humans would be able to live on those lands. And definitely no food can be produced there, not for however long it takes to remediate that soil. And within that, these alternative economies are the technologies and the the facilitators, the innovators, the engineers, and the creatives that could architect systems that actually achieve the goal of that I outlined earlier, of growing and sustaining life. And I don't want to bring it too philosophical again, but I will for a second of why we're doing this. I don't believe there can ever be a perfect society, really. I don't believe there can ever be a perfect human system that is maintained forever. I think that goes against the very nature of this world, this cosmos. The only constant is change. Obviously, it's a cliche, but really, to go deeper into it, the only, the greatest purpose we can embody is to creatively express and create. And the issues that we're seeing in communities and landscapes right now are due to dysfunctions within systems that are completely obsolete. And in this process now, we are at a stage of deep stakeholder engagement. And then we will go into, as a Nature Positive initiative, into project design within communities, although I'm doing it in parallel, as I mentioned, with the bioregional hub as a skeleton. And that's where we're at now. I hope that's a bit less philosophical, Helene, and outline the process a bit better. And also, this is, it's 2 years of work to summarize in here. And yeah, so if anyone is interested in finding out more, again, I'll send those documents with your recording and with this recording, and then also welcoming anyone to get in touch with me at any time. Yeah.
Thank you, Shanti.
Yeah.
Insightful, and I think everyone will be interested in taking a look at the documents as well. Yeah, so thanks for agreeing to share that. If we don't have any further questions, then I'm going to close the meeting. I don't see any. I'm scrolling down.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge this wonderful map that someone has made. Yeah, thank you.
Very creative.
Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, thanks everyone. So Teresa is going to share the recording along with the documents, and thanks for attending our web chat. And thanks again to Shanti.
Thank you so much.
All, have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.